In high school, I took a trip with LOMIC, Lutheran Outdoor Ministries of Indiana, Kentucky. That's our camp ministry. We backpacked a small portion of the Appalachian Trail. Me being me, at 16 or so, even then I decided that an excellent way to prepare for this trip wasn't like hiking with a full backpack or anything like that. It was to read everything I could about the Appalachian Trail. One of the public librarians in Lebanon was actually a member of my home congregation, and she recommended the book, A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. Pro tip, while it's a great book, I would skip the chapter on bear attacks right before you go on the trail. My friends found my worry about bears hilarious, and I was given all kinds of bear things to take on my trip, like a teddy bear and stickers and that. Anyway, when Bryson and his friend Stephen attempt the trail's 100-mile wilderness in Maine, they end up in some silly argument. Frustrated, each of them steps off the trail in different directions into the woods, and they are immediately lost. And I can tell you that the Appalachian Trail isn't like a state park trail or the trail at Griffey Lakes for Word in the Woods. The Appalachian Trail, in most parts, is about as wide as your foot, and really only visible because of these widely spaced blazes. In a place as densely wooded as Maine, stepping off the trail can be a dire mistake. You may not find it again. Miraculously, Bryson and his friend do find each other and the trail, and then they turn tail right out of that wilderness, never making it anywhere near the summit and end of the trail. But what I've long thought about is how they lost the way, not when they stepped off the trail, but when they gave up on one another. They lost the way when they thought they had to go it alone. In today's gospel reading, Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the life. And I wonder, if Jesus is the way, can we ever truly get lost? Which I think is Thomas's question too, among many. Why is Jesus telling them that he's going away? And what if they lose sight of them? And when will they gather with him again? And then all of a sudden Thomas is like, I know how to relieve my fears. He says, this is great, Jesus. You've got the B&B reservations ready to go, but here's the thing. We need the address. I'll just put it in my GPS. We'll just use Waze. We'll get to you. No problem. Lickety split. But Jesus is not interested in being the kind of turn-by-turn directions that get you to your destination in a way that you never really see or understand how you got there. We become so focused on the destination that we treat the way like a solo hike. But Jesus is less concerned about taking the most expedient route and so much more concerned with how we treat each other along the way. Not the way or the road that we take to get there, but the way, the manner in which we get there. Which is this. It's asking questions like, who are we walking with? Are we paying attention to who's beside us? Who has fallen behind and who has stepped off into the woods? We've spent much of Christian history on the wrong side of this, trying to make the faithful life into a road that is all about me, my piety, my sin, my salvation, a path that's meant to get me to the dwelling place that Christ prepares for me as quickly as possible, rather than attending to whom we travel with and their needs. We tend to center our lives only on our own desperate desire to know we are saved. We assume then that the path is narrow, that the wisdom way of Proverbs is like a trail hidden in the woods, known only to those who've already gotten the coordinates. But in Proverbs, wisdom, and it might be be helpful to remember that the early church saw Jesus, saw the second person of the Trinity in Proverbs' portrayal of wisdom. And elsewhere in the book, wisdom shouts out to people on the way, on the heights, at the crossroads, the gates of the town, the square. She shouts to be heard, I think, because the way is actually crowded. That's the prophet's vision of the way. In fact, the only other time in John's gospel that the way is mentioned is when John the Baptist says that he is the voice of one crying out in the wilderness, "Make straight the way of the Lord." It's a quote from Isaiah, and here's what else Isaiah says next. "Every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken." And now you're probably humming something from Handel's Messiah, so sorry about that. But what I want you to see is that the way that Jesus is drawing from for this image is of a crowded highway. Elsewhere, Isaiah says that all nations will stream to this way, old and young, all genders, all races and ethnicities. It will be an easy enough road that everyone can take it, not just the able-bodied, the sighted, the athletic, the well-trained. Even a fool will be unable to lose their way, Isaiah says. This is who Jesus is when he says he is the way. All flesh shall see it together. And I can't help but think that if we lose the way, we lose it not by making mistakes, not by falling again into sin, not by stumbling. We lose the way when we lose sight of each other. Because Jesus calls us into community. There are many dwelling places, he says. And after this reading, he promises to send another helper, the advocate, the Spirit of truth. And after this reading, he says, "I will not leave you orphaned." And he says to his disciples to love one another. Belong to me, belong to one another. Walk with me, walk with one another. Jesus says, "You don't need directions, Thomas, because I am the way, and we walk this way together." Now here's the thing. When we next see Thomas in John's gospel, he's alone again. All the other disciples were together on the first day of the week, except for Thomas. And when the disciples we know that they were overcome by guilt and shame and fear, and perhaps this is why Thomas was away that night. We don't know why he wasn't there. But what we know is this, that when the way appeared, when Jesus appeared, the disciples did the opposite of what Bryson and his friend did when difference set them off the path and away from each other. The disciples went and got Thomas and kept him with them until they all saw Jesus together. That's the way. Not GPS, not a solo hike, a huge highway, wide enough for all of us, and people who won't let you walk it alone. It's hard to get lost when Jesus is the way. And this is beautiful, beloved. And we have to be honest that sometimes we do feel like we've gotten lost. Sometimes we are hurt right when and where we ought to belong. Hurt by other believers, hurt by the church. But the thing about being the way, this way, is that the one who is lost is not expected to just figure it out and show up and belong all on their own. It isn't up to the one who is lost to find their way back. In the fear and the confusion of the crucifixion and the suddenly empty tomb, Jesus shows up. The way shows up. And when Thomas isn't there on that day, the disciples go and get him. The very nature of the way is that it refuses to leave us alone lost in our pain and our hurt and our confusion and our frustration. The very nature of the way is that the church is not here to tell us that we are lost, but to proclaim Jesus has sent us to find you, to walk with you. The way is crowded, and we go together. Amen.